Did you know that America's first bomber was a homemade wooden contraption with two guys sitting in actual bathtubs? One was flying, and the other was hand-dropping grenades over the side. Yeah, obviously that was just a joke, but it shows how far we've come. Today we're diving into the real story. This is the complete evolution of American bombers, from fragile pioneers to the ultimate weapons of the sky. World War I. Martin MBT. It was the very first large bomber built entirely in America. While Europe still dominated the skies, this twin-engine giant gave the US Navy and Marine Corps their own heavy striking power for the first time. Its crews flew dangerous reconnaissance and bombing runs right up to the armistice, proving that American industry could finally stand toe-to-toe with the best in the world. Curtiss HS. This giant flying boat became the backbone of coastal patrol. It hunted German U-boats along the Atlantic, and was one of the first aircraft to carry a heavy bomb load across open ocean. Its crews spent hours scanning the waves, knowing that spotting a periscope could mean the difference between life and death for entire convoys. Curtiss F-5L. An improved version of the HS, it flew longer patrols and carried even more ordnance. It helped secure American shipping lanes in the final months of the war and laid the foundation for decades of Navy patrol bomber doctrine. Interwar period. Martin NBS-1. This was America's first true night bomber produced in serious numbers. It proved that the US could design and build heavy aircraft without copying European designs. In 1921 it made history by sinking the captured German battleship Ostfriesland in front of stunned observers, showing the world that air power could defeat even the strongest warships. Douglas DT. A tough torpedo bomber that operated from both land and carrier decks. It gave the Navy its first real ship-killing capability, and taught pilots the dangerous art of low-level torpedo runs that would later decide entire naval battles. Curtiss CS. Another early torpedo carrier that bridged the gap between World War I and the carrier age. Its crews practiced the precise low-altitude attacks that would become legendary in the Pacific years later. Martin T-3M. It served as the Navy's standard torpedo bomber throughout the late 1920s. Reliable and rugged, it trained an entire generation of naval aviators who would later fly the more famous Avengers and Helldivers. Huffdaland XB-1. This lone prototype was America's first attempt at a purpose-built heavy bomber after the war. Although only one was built, its lessons shaped every bomber that followed. Curtiss B-2 Condor. A massive biplane bomber that looked like something from a science fiction movie. It carried a heavy bomb load and even featured a machine gun turret, the first step toward the flying fortresses of the next decade. Keystone from B-3 to B-6, the last of the big biplane bombers. These sturdy aircraft kept the Army Air Corps in the bombing business during the lean years of the Great Depression, and paved the way for the all-metal monoplanes that would dominate the skies. Martin B-10. The revolutionary all-metal monoplane that suddenly made every other bomber in the world obsolete. It flew faster than most fighters of its day, and proved that speed and altitude could protect bombers better than armor alone. Curtiss A-12 Shrike. A fast ground attack bomber that gave the Army its first real dive bombing capability. Its crews perfected the screaming dives that would terrorize enemy troops in the coming war. Great Lakes BG. A small but tough dive bomber that served as the Navy's bridge between the old biplanes and the modern Helldivers. Its pilots trained the tactics that would later sink Japanese carriers. Consolidated P-2Y. A long-range patrol flying boat that could stay aloft for over 20 hours. It pushed the limits of endurance and showed the Navy how to protect vast ocean convoys. Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. It became the symbol of American air power. On the bloody Schweinfurt, Regensburg mission in 1943, hundreds of these bombers fought their way through swarms of fighters to strike deep into Germany. Even when badly damaged, they often brought their crews home, earning the nickname that would echo through history. Would you have climbed into a B-17 knowing you might face hundreds of enemy fighters with no escort? Let me know in the comments. World War II. Northrop A-17. A fast attack bomber that gave the Army its first modern ground support aircraft. It proved that speed and maneuverability could deliver precision strikes where heavy bombers could not go. In the early days of the war it flew low-level attacks in the Pacific, often returning with bullet holes but still completing the mission. Vought SB-2U Vindicator. the Navy's first monoplane dive bomber. Its crews flew the dangerous low-level attacks that helped turn the tide in the early Pacific battles. During the Battle of Midway, several Vindicators pressed home attacks even after their formation was decimated. North American XB-21. A sleek prototype medium bomber that never made it past the test stage but influenced the design of the legendary Mitchell. Its innovative layout and defensive armament became the blueprint for future medium bombers. Consolidated PB-2Y Coronado. A massive four-engine patrol bomber that could cross entire oceans. It hunted U-boats and Japanese ships while carrying a heavy bomb load. One famous mission saw a single Coronado fly non-stop for over 3,000 miles to deliver critical intelligence. Boeing XB-15. The giant experimental bomber that was bigger than anything else in the world at the time. Although only one was built, its lessons helped create the B-17 and B-29. It once carried a spare engine inside its fuselage all the way from the US to Hawaii. Hall XPTBH. An unusual experimental torpedo bomber that tested radical ideas. Only one was ever built, but it pushed the boundaries of what a carrier-based attacker could do. Lockheed Hudson. A fast medium bomber that served both the US and Britain. It became famous for hunting U-boats and delivering precision strikes across the Atlantic. British crews nicknamed it the Hudson, and used it to sink the first U-boat ever destroyed by an American-built aircraft. Consolidated B-24 Liberator. The most produced heavy bomber in history. Its long range allowed it to strike targets no other aircraft could reach, from the Pacific to the skies over Europe. During the famous low-level raid on the Ploiești oil fields in Romania, B-24s flew at treetop height straight into a wall of flak, and each could carry up to 8,000 pounds of bombs. Douglas B-23 Dragon. A fast medium bomber that served as a stopgap until better designs arrived. It flew coastal patrols and trained crews for the bigger missions ahead. Douglas A-20 Havoc. A tough, fast attack bomber that excelled at low-level strikes. It terrorized German and Japanese troops from treetop height. In the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, it helped sink an entire Japanese convoy in a single day, dropping 500-pound bombs from just 50 feet above the water. Martin, Maryland. A sleek medium bomber that saw heavy action with Allied forces. It proved that American designs could compete with the best European aircraft. Martin PBM Mariner. A powerful patrol flying boat that hunted submarines across vast oceans. Its crews spent endless hours scanning the waves for periscopes. One Mariner once stayed airborne for 24 straight hours tracking a German U-boat. Brewster SB-2A Buccaneer. A scout bomber built in large numbers but plagued with problems. It taught the Navy valuable lessons about what not to do in aircraft design. Grumman TBF Avenger. The legendary torpedo bomber that helped win the Battle of Midway. Its crews flew straight into the teeth of Japanese carriers and changed the course of the Pacific War. A single Avenger squadron sank more Japanese shipping tonnage than any other aircraft type in the war, often carrying a 2,000-pound torpedo or 4 500-pound bombs. Lockheed Ventura or Harpoon. A rugged medium bomber and patrol aircraft that served in both the Atlantic and Pacific. It delivered devastating strikes against enemy shipping. Vought TBU Sea Wolf. A powerful torpedo bomber that arrived too late to see much combat, but represented the peak of wartime carrier-based design. Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. In its fighter-bomber role, it could carry as much ordnance as some dedicated bombers. It became the workhorse of close air support across Europe. Pilots called it the Jug, and it could absorb incredible battle damage and still bring its pilot home, often hauling up to 2,500 pounds of bombs and rockets. Boeing B-29 Superfortress. The most advanced bomber of the war. On August 6, 1945, one specially modified example named Enola Gay changed the world forever when it dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Each B-29 could carry up to 20,000 pounds of conventional bombs or a single 10,000-pound atomic weapon, flying missions from the Marianas that covered distances no other bomber had ever attempted. Consolidated B-32 Dominator. The last heavy bomber of World War II. It arrived too late to see major action but represented the final evolution of piston-engine bomber technology. Douglas A-26 Invader. A fast, heavily armed medium bomber that excelled at night attacks and precision strikes. It remained in service long after the war ended, and even flew combat missions in Korea and Vietnam. Curtiss SB-2C Helldiver. The last and most powerful dive bomber of the war. Its crews delivered the final blows against the Japanese fleet in the closing months of the Pacific Campaign. Despite being difficult to handle, it could carry twice the bomb load of the Dauntless it replaced, up to 2,000 pounds in the internal bay plus another 1,000 pounds under the wings. Martin B-26 Marauder. A fast medium bomber that earned a fearsome reputation. Early versions had a bad safety record, but once crews learned to fly it properly, it became one of the most accurate bombers of the war. It flew the famous low-level raid on the IJmuiden power station in Holland at just 50 feet above the ground. North American B-25 Mitchell. The aircraft that carried out the daring Doolittle raid on Tokyo just months after Pearl Harbor. It gave America its first victory when the nation needed it most. 16 B-25s took off from a carrier deck, a feat many thought impossible at the time, each carrying 4 500-pound bombs. Douglas BTD Destroyer. A late-war torpedo and dive bomber that arrived just as the war was ending. Only a handful were built, but they represented the final step before jets took over. Grumman AF Guardian. The first purpose-built anti-submarine bomber for the Navy. It hunted Soviet submarines during the early Cold War. Douglas A-1 Skyraider. A rugged propeller-driven attack bomber that served from World War II all the way through Vietnam. It could carry more bombs than some jet fighters and became a legend among ground troops. In Vietnam, it often flew rescue missions that saved hundreds of downed pilots. Cold War. Convair B-36 Peacemaker. The largest piston-engine bomber ever built. With 6 engines pushing it across entire continents, it was America's ultimate deterrent in the early nuclear age. Its crews flew non-stop missions lasting over 40 hours. Boeing B-47 Stratojet. The first jet bomber to enter large-scale service. It could reach any target in the Soviet Union and return, ushering in the jet age of strategic bombing. Boeing B-50 Super Fortress. An upgraded version of the B-29 that could fly even farther. It kept the nuclear deterrent alive until newer jets were ready. Northrop YB-49. A radical flying wing bomber that looked like something from the future. One of the 2 prototypes crashed during testing, killing several crew members, and the entire program was quietly cancelled. Convair B-58 Hustler. The world's first supersonic strategic bomber. It could fly at Mach 2 and deliver nuclear weapons faster than any defender could react. Its crews set numerous speed and distance records that still stand today. Douglas A-3 Sky Warrior. The heaviest carrier-based bomber ever built. Nicknamed the Whale, it served as the Navy's primary nuclear strike aircraft for decades. It could launch from carriers with a full nuclear load and return safely. Martin B-57 Canberra. An American-built version of the British Canberra. It flew high-altitude reconnaissance and tactical bombing missions around the world. General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark. A supersonic swing-wing bomber that could fly low and fast to avoid radar. It became the backbone of American strike missions for over 30 years. In Libya in 1986, F-111s flew the longest combat mission in history at that time. Modern and future concepts. North American XB-70 Valkyrie. It was designed to cruise at Mach 3 and ride its own shockwave like a surfer. One prototype reached 3 times the speed of sound, but the program ended when one aircraft collided with an F-104 during a test flight, killing 2 pilots. Rockwell B-1 Lancer. A supersonic bomber that could carry more weapons than any previous aircraft. Its crews flew low-level penetration missions that no other bomber could attempt. Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk. The world's first operational stealth aircraft. It struck targets in Baghdad on the very first night of the Gulf War, while remaining completely invisible to enemy radar. Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit. The most expensive aircraft ever built, each one cost over $2 billion. Its flying wing shape and stealth technology make it nearly undetectable, allowing it to penetrate the most heavily defended airspace on Earth. Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider. The next-generation stealth bomber that is already flying in secret. It will eventually replace the B-2 and B-1, carrying America's strategic deterrent into the era of hypersonic weapons and advanced air defenses. The evolution never stopped, and it never will. Which American bomber surprised you the most and why? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey through the skies, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.